Now, in the 1970s, you also had sort of a minor adventure doing very politically correct
Yeah,
illustrations for causes that you
yeah. It started in the end of the
enjoyed.
70s, and I got roped into drawing for his left-wing newspaper when I lived in the Central Valley in California.
Right.
And
And and
that,
he,
that was a very disappointing and frustrating affair because it could never make those serious political people happy no matter what you drew. Basically, they wanted you to be their hand. They wanted you to draw exactly what they thought a political cartoon should be, which was never funny. Was it John Waters said that those political left-wing people are humor impaired? But
right.
I believed in the politics. I agreed with their politics, but drawing comics and cartoons for those papers was really a very unrewarding task.
Yeah, it's not a good match because they need that kind of humorless fervor to get
I don't know what it is. I don't
to get
know. I agreed with their politics,
right, right.
but they just they're so dour about it. I don't know. And then I was also inspired by the political cartoons of Thomas Nast, who's this 19th century American political cartoonist whose work I really like, very powerful stuff. But his images are always powerfully negative and grotesque. He would make grotesque caricatures of political people that he thought were villains, like Boss Tweed or something. So I kind of followed his lead that way. And then the people at the paper said, "Oh, these are too negative." The editor, who was this woman, said, "This is going to give my child nightmares, and I can't show this." Or we're going to alienate the farmers. You drew this farm machine; it looks like a monster. We don't want to alienate the farmers. So you couldn't win. There was no way to win with them. Then they were never satisfied with anything you did, and there was no appreciation whatsoever. And paste up night. Me and this other guy who never said anything at the meetings, we'd be there doing all the work, all the paste up work. All these loudmouth editors and the people that running the paper, they'd have meetings, say, "Okay, who's going to distribute the papers?" And this one guy would always go like that. He would always be the guy that would go out and put the papers in the bins and all that stuff, and me and him did the paste up.
Wow. Did they understand what you had done over the past 15 years?
Barely. They barely grasped it, And then they started hearing that I had this reputation. And then to keep the paper going, they sold all the original artwork that I had done for the paper.
Wow.
Keep it going. But
Well, you hit the well, that could have put a damper on the 1970s for you.
it kind of was disillusioning for working for political people,
Yeah.
After that, I kind of avoided
I don't
directly working with people in political causes. It's just,
I don't think you're temperamentally cut out for that.
nah, not really. But they don't know. They just see our Crumb. Get me our Crumb. He sympathizes with our cause. Let's get him to work for us. They don't understand. They don't get it.
Right. Now, you hit the 1980s running, I think. In 1981, you established the magazine called Weirdo. And
Yeah.
now this was your conception. You edited the magazine.
Yes.
That's a great drawing, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think Weirdo is one of your, again, it was one of your great creative periods, that whole decade and a
Well,
half.
thanks. Yeah, I kind of started to pick up steam again, I think, in around 1980, 81.
Now, do you recognize that as a bit of a turning point? Because the work changed. I think the work noticeably changed.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what it was exactly. I don't know. I think it's just sheer persistence finally began to pay off, I didn't give up. I worked through that period of crisis of aimlessness, and suicidal depression, and just kept working and started to pick up some other source of inspiration. I don't know. I actually went back to being inspired by Kurtzman again.
I was gonna say this is.
Yeah.
It looks like it's inspired from both Humbug and Mad.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
You compare that to those early covers, it's, obvious. But steal from the best is my motto.
yeah, I mean every one of the Weirdo covers was
Yeah, I put a lot of work
a
into those.
masterpiece.
But I got a lot of shit from some of the critics, though, when Weirdo first came out.
On what basis?
Cat Ironwood thought Weirdo was crappy. Art Spiegelman called it a piece of shit.
That was his considered judgment.
Yeah. And others like that. The critics didn't like it.
Huh. Well, now Spiegelman was publishing
Raw at
Raw
the
at the
time,
time,
same time,
which in a way was aesthetically diametrically opposed to it.
Yeah, he went in for all the fancy production values and artsy touches and all that, which didn't interest me at all. I was interested in producing something kind of like Humbug, but maybe with a little bit of the like punk aesthetic to it that was around in those days. You know, all those little zines
Kind of
put out by the
homemade.
punks. Yeah, I like that thing. You know, this crazy anarchic punk thing. You know, kind of like the graphic aspect of that. You know, it was kind of creative and was very anti-hippie and everything. Very harsh and hard edge and all that. I like that. And you know, also there's all this stuff floating around like Zukowski and all this crazy stuff that some people should see it, you know. So. And I also had that idea to do those photo funnies, which was a big kind of a failure.
Right.
Nobody liked those. The comic fans didn't like the photo funnies.
Right.
They said, more comics, just give us more comics. That's all we want, comics.
I didn't even choose any of the fumettis for this.
No,
Um,
just as well.
yeah. Yeah.
I had a lot of fun making those fumettis.
Well, it looked like you had a lot of fun making them.
I did. I got to frolic around with a lot of cute girls.
Which was an important part of.
That was my whole initial intention when I did Weirdo. The photo funnies was the basic reason I did Weirdo.
Maybe that's why the magazine has such vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really, got my energy up. What was really surprising is how eager and willing all these girls were to pose. That was really surprised me.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. These nice college girls, and they want to take their clothes off, and I said, no, we can't do nudity. Just put your shirt back on. We're not going to show bare titties.
So where did you find you were in Winters, California.
Yeah, which was right near Davis. So there's lots of college girls, and these guys I knew said, oh yeah, we'll bring some girls in. Yeah, they love to do it. It's fun. It's fun, funny, wacky. Had nothing to do with me being famous. They didn't know who I was.
Right.
It's just a chance to do some nutty poses, and that surprised me.
Well, your posture was wacky rather than perverted, so that probably spun that. You spun the pervert angle.
I was inspired by those 1940s girly books, Wink, Twitter, Flirt. You ever seen any of those?
Right. Well, now, in retrospect, I mean, it seems to me that Weirdo and Raw performed necessary functions. I mean, they were like the opposite poles in the comic spectrum, but they were both essential.
Well, Spiegelman had this aspiration to raise comics in the realm of culture, to make comics culturally respectable, and to pull them out of the realm of something sleazy and seedy and something that you'd be embarrassed to admit that you did, And I wasn't interested in that at all. I like that whole seedy, sleazy aspect of comics,
Right.
I inspired to make comics, sharp and satirical like Kurtzman did, but to make them culturally respectable, to me, I thought that might be the kiss of death, cultural respectability. I said, and how here we are in the museums. Hey, great, The original artwork's worth more money, and and they're writing all kinds of art speak about comics now, which.
Well, how do you feel about that?
I'm not sure the world really needs that. I don't know. They'd probably get paid better, and now there's a respectable section of a bookstore called graphic novels, so that's nice, But I kind of miss the days of cheaply produced comic books, I kind of miss that format. And nowadays in America, nobody will even print those cheap comic books anymore.
No.
You can't go somewhere unless you do it yourself and get what's printed.
No, it's impossible to sell them. I mean, you can sell.
Well, you're the businessman if you say so.
Trust me on this. You could sell like 800 copies of a alternative comic.
Yeah.
I mean, even the mainstream comics, even popular titles like Spider-Man and X-Men, they don't make any money. I mean,
really?
They sell like 50,000 copies, which is not enough to make money for a New York corporation.
So what keeps them going, or are they dying, or what?
They're dying, and they're kept alive because they're essentially fodder for movies. That's why they keep publishing comics so that they can make movies out of them.
Fodder for merchandising and
Right,
movies.
right.
Okay.
The comics themselves don't make any money. There's no reason to publish them except
But,
to...
you know, I'm attracted to cheaply produced cultural artifacts in general. You know, cheap toys, books, magazines, you know, cheap stuff. I like that idea, you know, of cheaply produced artifacts that people can buy, that anybody can buy. I like that, you know.
But now, is this a superficial difference between you and Art? Because you both share a seriousness toward comics. I mean, but you both wanted to make comics that were seriously apprehended by people, right?
Well, taken seriously, you mean?
Well, not taken
I don't
seriously so much as you were serious about your art. You were serious about comics as an art.
Yeah, but
You reluctantly admit this.
in the early days, I kind of had the same kind of crazy idea that Kurtzman had in the early days of Mad and all that. It's just to make something crazy. Wow, you can get it out there in this cheap marketplace, and maybe people will buy it. You know, maybe people will like this. Just do some crazy thing. That's what I got out of. One of the things I got out of LSD is that you don't have to take this that seriously. You know.
But you know, Kurtzman hated the cheap comic book format. Hated it.
Yeah, well, in the case that you see, it was really too cheap. The paper was so bad that just you know, now that you can't even handle those anymore, they just fall apart in your hands. Original EC comic, you know. So that's because they were just so sleazy. The publishers were so sleazy. They were semi-criminals, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Kurtzman really aspired to respectability.
More and more of a kind, you know. Yeah, he did. He did.
This is a...
And the more he aspired toward respectability, the less and less interesting the work became.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. It's
this
tricky.
is a
tricky thing.
Yeah. This is an example of one of Robert's comics in Weirdo. I think this is one of his best autobiographical strips.
You think
oh
so?
Yeah.
This is called My Midlife Crisis, which was already like 30 years ago.
Your elderly crisis is coming up.
Oh boy.
This is about 10 pages long, and it's again really a dense narrative. I mean, it's the kind of story that could have been 20 pages.
Huh.
But because you packed so many panels and so much narrative into it.
That was inspired by the Bungle family.
Which was a dense strip.
It was, textual. It was all text, you know. Bungle family.
And he did a wide range of strips.
Yeah. Well, after my daughter was born, then I had to read her fairy tales and children's books, and I was inspired to do stories by these children's stories, like this and that Mother Hulda thing that I did, and I don't know, maybe one or two others like that.
Oh, that's what did it. So what year was Sophie born?
81.
Okay, and this is 84.
Remember that strip I did for you called Miss Susie? Yes. Miss Susie had a steamboat. The steamboat had a bell. Miss Susie went to heaven. The steamboat went to hell. Oh, operator, give me number 9. And if you disconnect me, I'll chop off your behind the refrigerator. There was a piece of glass. Miss Susie sat upon it and broke her little. Ask me no more questions. I'll tell you no more lies. The boys are in the bathroom zipping up their flies are in the meadow. The meadow's in the park. The girls are in the movies, kissing in the dark, 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 and on like that. That came from... Thank you very much. Now for my next number. That's from my daughter Sophie. You know, and you had to do it like this. That's where that strip came from.
Oh man, you didn't know you were getting like a Vegas act on top of everything else here. I just have a few, I think, of the highlights of Robert's strip. You created the character Modo Day, which was sort of this yuppie. Does anyone know the term yuppie? Probably not.
Yuppie. In the 1980s, you had a new generation of young people in America who, in spite of all the hippie stuff that had happened and everything, all they cared about was making money. Money again became the ruling king of people's lives. And like I knew this young couple who decorated their Christmas tree with $100 bills.
What was this? You knew this?
Yeah, this couple I knew. Like he was a lawyer, and you know she's actually the inspiration for that Modo Day story where they start a restaurant. This woman and her husband who had decorated their Christmas tree with $100 bills. So it was pretty repulsive.
Yeah,
the
Moto
yuppie.
Moto Day was this completely artificial creation.
And she's an amalgam of several women that I knew at the time. But one thing the yuppies did for America, though, they improved the quality of the restaurant food.
Right, right.
The yuppies demanded better food,
Huh.
better coffee.
Is that where that came from?
Yes,
Really?
Yeah. Before the yuppies, American coffee was terrible.
Huh.
And the yuppies insisted on all this, Italian coffee and, all that European-style coffee shops and
Huh.
all that stuff.
You're a coffee drinker?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, they're good. They were good for something then.
yeah. They weren't. Yuppies served their purpose.
Now, you also did these dense adaptations, literary adaptations, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And again, just to, you can see how different it is from the more spontaneous work
Yeah.
in the.
That's when I started running out of story ideas. Just
Well.
borrowed from old literature and stuff.
You didn't let that stop you.
This was taken from a psychiatric tract from the 1890s or 1880s. Before Freud, this guy was one of those Vienna, Austria psychoanalysts, was very fascinated by people's sexual quirks, and he collected sexual perversions, case number 65, case number 99. And it's great stuff, great for comics.
And this work is much more methodically and carefully structured and
Yeah.
rendered than
Yeah.
anything you'd done in the past.
Right. Well, I was starting to get old by this time.
Is that what accounts for it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, why would
You get more methodical and less spontaneous as you get older. It's the way it is. You can't maintain that sprint when you're old, You got to plan. You got to, Kurtzman used to tell me about that. The same thing happened. He said that same happened to him.
But on the other hand, don't you want to do less work? I mean, don't you want to put less effort into it as you get older? Because
It's a different kind of effort.
Because you're putting
It's
more
effort in a way. It's more work. It's not doing less work. It's just, you can't just do it off the top of your head in that way you do when you're young. I don't know. Just seemed to be part of the process of growing older.
What prompted you to do a strip about Philip K. Dick? Were you a fan of his?
No, never read any of his fiction.
I wouldn't think so.
No, not interested in science fiction.
Right.
But this was a story that was in that magazine that Jay Kinney started called Gnosis, about his religious experience, his mystical religious experience. And that to me was really interesting, his religious visions that he had. He was a pretty crazy guy.
Looks like another strip perhaps inspired by
That was
reading to Sophie.
Grimm's fairy tale, Mother Hulda.
And another great autobiographical
Yeah.
strip when you were a kid.
Yeah, it's all true. That was my sex life in high school, was playing footsie. Did they play footsie in India? Is that something that goes on here? They're all embarrassed. They're all looking away.
This is one of my favorite of your strips,
Oh yeah.
which I
Well,
think
I hope you
perhaps many of us have experienced.
Yeah. Don't show the whole thing. It's
No, don't
you know,
worry. It's only the first page.
It gets kind of pornographic.
Yeah.
But this is all
But-
about making a complete fool of yourself because you might just happen to catch this woman at the right moment where you might experience something exciting sex with her. And just going to great lengths, going on the bus in the rain. This woman who you don't even like necessarily. And she's in the process of embroidering a jacket for some rock and roll musician.
And it's being aware that you're degrading yourself, but being so obsessed you can't help
That's
yourself
right.
doing it, which
It's driven by libido and
I assume
sex
all of us have
drive.
done. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm kind of over that now. I'm old enough. I'm kind of free of that to some degree. I won't go to those lengths anymore. Been through that.